without further ado. Okay, ready.
Legacy launch?
Legacy launch. Let's go.
Legacy launch.
Legacy launch. Well, do you want to start? Do I want to start? I don't know. What
whatever.
You had the most progression, so tell me about your launch experience. I want to hear.
Well, so it was very interesting in terms of it seemed like things were extraordinarily smooth. And of course, I was basically a salt factory because I managed to find the only bug that was actually affecting anybody, which was Clarissa. You click on her and you don't have access to the file. I forget what exactly it is, like NPPQ or something. So I missed out a little bit on the first day progression, but the group, we were doing well up until Act 3. The group did really well.
Okay.
We had, I think, let's see, it was Garatha, myself, Hellman, and Havoc and his partner showed up at some point because I think Crame might have died. So we had basically 6 of the top 10.
Creme de la creme of the...
Yeah, creme de la creme of the rush there. And it went really, really smoothly. I have to say, I don't know that I'm in love with the what build should I play? Oh, I know. Elementalist Witch, Flame Blast Totems that we've got going on.
No, I think it's kind of ridiculous. I don't know. When they introduced the node Elemental Overload, it was kind of obvious that it was such a powerhouse early on, if you could ever get that and make use of it. Because imagine this, right? Let's say you're on the other side of the tree and you're doing a caster. Well, there's not a node within the first 20 levels or 10 levels that's going to give you 40% more damage. And that's kind of crazy. So.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, what do you even really need? Because I actually really haven't looked at it. What do you actually need from Elementalist to make it work? Is it only 2 ascendancy points to make it work, or is it 4?
In just Elementalist itself?
Yeah.
It depends. Elementalist is not really. You don't really need anything. It just gives you elemental damage. It gives you a lot of damage early on, and it gives you tools to deal with reflect, basically.
Okay.
Right? It's just a class that does non-crit best because it has the most amount of elemental damage that double dips. Right? So that's basically what it is. It's just a class with a lot of double dipping damage and elemental reflect immune, or you just lower the elemental reflect. So that's an easy way of overcoming every problem you might have early on, which is why it's so good. And it gives you some AoE, but the AoE is not as good anymore. And it gives you some conflux and ignite as well, right? So what you would probably go for is the beacon of what's it called now? Because there's the beacon of corruption, but that's the necromancer, and then there's the beacon of something, which is the one that gives you status, it gives you a prolif, yeah. That spreads all your ignites and shocks, and so you get that for your 4-pointer. So your second lab, you get that.
Your second lab, yeah.
Yeah,
because
and then you have OP ignites.
Right. Because we did cruel lab, and I would have said the clear speed of the group exponentially increased
because you get the proliferation.
Right. So I was behind just a little bit, right? And but I was catching up, and then we did the labs together, and I was not going Elementalist because I was doing the Golem, so I was doing Necro, and I was gonna be support for the group.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, I was supporting my totems. I was going pretty fast, but they went like a rocket ship after we got the 4 point. So, but yeah, it's been, I've been having a lot of fun. I will say that our discussion, I've been thinking about it basically the entire league, that our discussion about clutter, I think, was very prescient of what's going to go on, because at least for me, clutter in the inventory
is full all the time of all sorts of crap.
Yeah.
I think for between the maps, the Pirandas, you have the coins on the Pirandas, the essences as well. Sorry. We have the and then you have, what else do we have? We have the Leaguestones. Oh my god, you have Leaguestones everywhere. And you get more than you can. Talisman. Oh, I don't run that. So I don't have that. Fuck that. Oh my god.
Because I mean, there's cool talismans that I wanted, so I was running it whenever I saw it.
Oh,
I have
okay.
and then I'm like, okay, should I keep 5 talismans in my inventory in case
Just
I get a
oh
stone
yeah,
circle?
yeah, yeah.
And then it's just like, holy moly. So, um, yeah, I don't, it's interesting. I think it's one of these things where I think, like a lot of things GGG does, the concept is super, super cool.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, I agree.
the implementation is usually very good to sort of good, somewhere in there, but that's okay. But then there's always this like one thing. And then unfortunately, at least for me, I feel like it can take away from it. So for me, the clutter problem, and then the other thing that's dumb, at least to me, is you have to micromanage the stones. If someone's like, "Oh, hey, Mors, I see that you're 85. Can you come kill Cruel Malachi for me?" Sure, buddy, whatever. But then I have my 3 really great stones on.
Yeah.
I can't set them only work in
Wait,
maps.
can't you take them off? You can just
Yeah. But I'm just saying.
I know it's kind of tedious, but
right.
Like moving around is
yeah. It's not something you think about. It's like I'm just trying to think of when they changed the way instant resets happened. Remember, and you could click on the waypoint and remake instead of going to town. It took me at least a week to unlearn that physical memory, right? Because I've been making instances for years in a race environment. So I'm just saying, add this extra step to the process where you have to be like, oh, do I have stones on? Okay, I got to take them out. And I don't think it's that big a deal. I just think it's something that they could smooth out somehow in the future. If this stays around going forward, they could smooth it out. So
I wanna actually I wanna ask you something here, because with this clutter thing. So my question is, there's been discussions prior to what we've had right here in terms of, well, how much stuff should there be on the ground? Should we have more inventory space? How do we deal with all this inventory clutter? Because this has been a thing to talk about since forever. And GGG stance has always been, well, we want you, the player, to make choices. Right? That's been our position. It's because they're not going to make it easier to deal with inventory management because you want players to make choices. I would then argue that now we've come so far to where we make so many choices all the time. With the new Leaguestones, you have to decide what kind of stone do I want to run? What kind of items do I want to pick up? You're always engaged with breaches. It's not always about picking up items anymore. In the beginning, in early release and beta, it was before any of the new leagues came out. The only thing that mattered was picking up the loot on the ground. There was the league mechanic back then. And so, should that interaction still have that much of an impact of your gameplay when we have all these other interesting mechanics that could be at the forefront that you would focus your attention on? Should that really be? Because if you give some automated, like, let's say we have like a bag of stones and a bag of talismans. You can imagine that, where they just default, when you pick them up, they default into a certain bag. Then you can then sort and whatever, you can probably customize that or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? 'Cause we still have all the normal items. Every item that's ever been in a game since then is still there. So it's not like anything is being taken away. It's just all these features are being implemented without cluttering the already very cluttered system that they've chosen, or whatever you want to say.
Well, that's such an interesting. I think that's such an interesting point because I'm just, so as we're on the subject of early league, I made, I want to say 40, 50 chaos, which is a lot early in the league, on picking up stuff that other people had left in the map. Now, of course, my success, it's not like, oh, I picked 3 items and they're all worth 20 chaos and I'm a genius. No, I had a lot of garbage there too, but people had gone past them. They were, tier 2 ES shields, right? I've sold 3 of those for 10 chaos each. They're all 400 ES or 350 ES. So I think it still exists, but you're definitely right that there's this like it's like become.
Well, it's not that it doesn't. It's not. My point isn't that it's not existing and that you can't pick up all these things. It's that they keep adding to the same system.
Right. The priority has changed.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
okay, like that. Yeah.
You were saying just because it's only gear. Now there's like 8 things you have to go between. So of course people leave stuff on the ground now because also, at least it feels to me so much more stuff drops than. Right, we're at the point. I mean, again,
you can't. There's just so many things to decide, which is not a bad. I think that's a good thing that we have all this choice and we can customize what kind of gameplay we want, which I feel is really interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So yeah, I mean, I guess it really just comes down to, do they do something like what you're suggesting with the the bag of stones? I think you said that in the last podcast, and I.
But what do you think about it? What would your stance be, like, if you thought about it?
Well, I mean, my stance would be, yes, I would really prefer to not be so burdened with this stuff. Like, I can already see, if I'm watching, say, your stream or Zizaran stream or somebody who's going really fast, right? They're going to have, I would bet you half of the inventory is going to be maps, Leaguestones, currency, right? And you'll pick up 2 items a map. And I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like that's sort of, I don't know, like.
You're always gonna have players that will figure out the minimum necessity for pushing forward to climbing a ladder system.
Right.
Especially early on, then there is less focus on actual gear acquirement and more on the accumulation of XP. So you're always gonna see that trend where people will forego certain things that you might think would be key to the game and that you shouldn't forego as a player, where like the game is about item acquirement and leveling up, and it's like the whole package. But when you have a race, you do remove things to make it more simple as a player to push faster. So you're always going to see that kind of thing will always happen, no matter how well you can make a system and how little clutter there is. There's always going to be that. People will always default back to that if they have the choice.
And I think that's a very fair point. So I mean, it's not necessarily how I'd want to play all the time, but I understand if you want to push, that's what you have to do. I just think it's where that chunk of your inventory, if we just say we're the left margin is growing. That's what I think is sort of both of our points, right? It's like
it's growing even into the like you're saying, it's growing even into the more not casual, the average player.
Well, yeah, that too, yeah, right.
Everyone's they pick up on the same kind of trends. They kind of like are fed down to us. And then you don't have the same amount of, like, it's not taken to the same extreme, but you see it more and more where you have the set amount of things that are just taken because you have to have them there. It's not really because it's a racing thing, but it's because, well, you have to have the Leaguestone, the talisman. You have all these things that you can encounter inside the map that you have to have ready so you don't have to leave the map to come back in.
Right.
Because whether or not you're going fast or not, you don't really want to go out and stop your gameplay.
Well, and on that, so then the interesting question, what I really want to know is, going forward into the league, what is it going to be like if you're trying to maintain a certain? It seems like so far we've been able to maintain a good something with Leaguestones, but I'm wondering, because it's not like we've been mapping for 2 weeks. When at the inevitable point where the league plateaus, right? Which of course we're not there yet, but I'm just saying, what happens at that point where the league people have been like, okay, I've accomplished stuff, and I'm going to play only a couple hours a day, and then you have to try to either farm the stones or buy the stones or whatever. I'm curious what it's going to end up being like in terms of that and the effect on the economy.
You mean with the Leaguestones themselves?
Well, yeah, just sort of the whole thing,
the whole package
how it's going to
right now.
Yeah, the whole package. Yeah, right now it seems easy because everyone's You know,
I think over time people are just gonna. So what I think is gonna happen is that I think the further we get into the league, the more people are going to find creative ways of putting everything together. With what do you have? You have those. I keep forgetting the name. The things you put on the map that augments everything in a circle around it.
The cartographer.
Yeah, the cartographer things. Sextants. There we go. So you're gonna see people doing the sextants. They're gonna roll the map for. No, you can't do the double beyond, right? Because you can't. Can you do the double beyond if you have the map with beyond and then you put, and then they have the Leaguestone as well?
We ran one like that and it was bonkers.
And it is double. Okay, so you're gonna see that. I mean, you're gonna have all these where you have all the sextants with the pack size. You're gonna have all the Leaguestones and everything just together, and you're gonna see people with 2,000 rampage kills in one map. I'm just saying, that's gonna be where people are going to they're gonna take it to the extreme eventually, when everything's coming together.
Right. And and the funny part is, I bought a new video card. It was time, and we did a double beyond breach. Map last night. What's it? The Wawarinka? I don't even know how to pronounce it. That crazy map. The boss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wakahuki Hakahuki. The Hawaiian fish. Huma Huma Nuka Aqua.
Yeah, something like that.
But anyway, it was so. I think my video driver crashed. My FPS went to 0 for so long. Yeah. Because we had a 800 rampage to just kills everything on the screen.
Yeah.
So it did that in the huge breach in the beyond, and so so
okay.
It's cool. I mean, I have to say, I give them credit, because I think a year ago that would have crashed the instance.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Or the loot would have crashed. So even though I'm I can't believe FPS is where it is, on the other hand, we're not crashing. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty impressed it was able to handle it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. But yeah, I'm curious, like you're saying, what's going to be the optimal, one sextant and these 2 stones on any map. They'll have,
it's not about what's going to be the optimal. It's going to be how extreme can we take it. That's always where it transpires into as the league progresses.
Right.
Optimal is when people are still racing for 100. It's when people are in that mindset, or whenever anyone is trying to get there, they're always trying to run optimal, and then it becomes on their second character, on your second attempt, or you're just kind of fed up with the entire thing and you just want to have fun, and it just goes in that direction, I think.
Okay, so on that, I want to ask, what is your next build?
My next build?
Right, you get the foiled legacy. You know what I'm saying? You get the crazy item.
Okay.
What would be your next cool thing to do?
Let me see. There is a few things. There are the flasks I really want to get. It's just because I love Pathfinder. It's because I love power. I love having a powerful character, and the flasks and the Pathfinder combined, if you get the legacy versions, are some of the most broken things in the game. You can have max block with just the potion. If you get a legacy roomies on Pathfinder, as long as you're wielding a weapon that gives you, or anything that gives you base block, you're dual wielding something, anything that gives you 15, I think, and you have max block, right? Because it's going to give you 40, and then you have 50% increased effectiveness total, so that's 60% block off the flask. So anything that gives you 15 block, you have max block every time the flask is up. That's just crazy. But so there's getting all the legacy Vinctars. Legacy Vinctars, you can make so many builds. With the new MOM and legacy Vinctars, you can probably have a life-based build with 10,000 plus. Easily 10,000 plus HP and mana combined. And you have leech to both sources, and you're unkillable. And then we have, while wearing a legacy lightning coil, obviously. What else? And then there's Aegis with the 4% armor.
Yes.
Or energy shield to armor, or whatever it's called. That's the other one.
Aegis is that's what I want.
That's a crazy one as well. It's just, there's so many old crazy uniques that you can make crazy things around. Voltaxic, 100% conversion. Did we even have 100% conversion voltaxic with the assassin back then? Like, was assassin even a thing?
No,
right? So now you can do assassin, poison. Yeah, it's gonna be absurd.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing is, I guess it seems like the price on the ancient reliquary is coming down.
It's coming up.
Oh, it's going up. Okay, because it wasn't listable on PoE Trade, I guess, the first 24 hours or something. And then I saw there's like 20-25 casts something per, and then they cratered a bit, but maybe they're coming back. Maybe now people.
Okay. I know that the Pulp, one of the people I'm playing with, he bought them at 12.15 yesterday, and then they've gone up 20 plus now.
Right. Well, as soon as people like that, what is Pulp trying to get something for a bow character? Or?
No, he's just trying to get as many as possible when they're cheap.
Oh, okay.
Because he's making a lot of chaos, and he's just spending it right now instead of hoarding them when they inflate and you lose value. Yeah. So it's just buying the items that are cheap that people want to liquidate. Right.
Yeah, and so it's interesting with thinking about what you're going to do for the sort of next build or whatever like that. I'm really interested to see if Legacy has the same legs that Breach did. That's what I'm curious about.
I think it does.
Okay.
Maybe not. I think maybe
you can make the League Breach, right?
Yes.
Effectively forever.
Somewhat, yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah, somewhat.
I think the one thing that might not make it last as long is the time of year we're in, where we had Christmas and people were on holiday and it's like winter and you're going all this, like, where you have a lot of free time, or you just want to, like, there's all this stress and you just want to like sit and just grind something. And now people are like back to work and there's not as much free time anymore for some duration until we get to the summer again, maybe, where 3.0 comes out. And there's also like, so people might just have I think a lot of people are probably just burnt out a little bit maybe from Breach, or they will be if they play a lot in this league plus all they played in Breach. Right. So maybe it's gonna fade a little bit quicker than Breach. I think there's gonna be good retention in this league as well. I think the mechanic is there. I think there's a lot of incentive as well getting foil uniques that might be, we don't know. Maybe they're exclusive to now. Maybe they're gonna come back later. We don't know.
Yeah.
So there's the sense of exclusivity of getting items as well.
I'm very excited to see what if there's like cool builds to try.
Yeah.
I'm pinning my hopes a little bit on 3.0 will slow the game down even more. We'll have more changes like the increased AoE changes.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want. It's weird because I sometimes think people are a little too. What do you want to make the game awful or something? No, I don't want to do that. But, like, so the AoE change came in. I don't see any noticeable difference in clear speed, at least that I've seen. But maybe I didn't play Flame Blast Totem.
Oh, there's a difference, especially later on, to where I think damage is more of a limiting factor right now, and then later on AoE is the only limiting factor because you one-shot everything anyways.
Right.
And so you just want to. The more you hit, but. I think the overlying problem is the double dipping mechanics with the burn and the poison.
That's not changed, right? As far as I know, that's not changed. Okay.
I think I'm positive about though is when you look at how they dealt with AoE, I think they dealt with it in a great way. Because apparently there is a quadratic increase in the area you gained. So you would get like because you were scaling with radius, you would get the area squared or whatever it's called. I don't know. I'm not a mathematician.
You get pi basically. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So. Yeah, but it just gave you this huge amount of area per extra point, so it just kept scaling upwards. And now it's the other way around, to where it has diminishing returns. So I think that was a good thing. Imagine they do maybe not something similar, but if they do something similar, let's just assume that they do. Let's say they have this idea about you can stack things, but to a certain degree, to where there's a point to where you want to stack the double dimming mechanics, but then the more you stack it, the less effective it becomes. It's still good and it's still a way of progressing your character to a certain point. It's just there might, instead of just making it so that you have two separate stats, there is a way of making. At least I think they are clever enough to find a way to make it a combined stat without having it being broken, because it feeds on itself.
What stat do you mean? You mean the double
poison?
Dipping,
all the double dipping poison that would apply twice.
Okay.
So I just think the AoE is pretty.
In that yeah, and I think in that like same sort of vein, for me, one thing I wish was nerfed a bit was movement speed. I would love to see movement speed take a little bit of the increased AoE. You get a lot of benefit up to a point, and or however they do it.
I think opportunity cost needs to be a little bit higher for movement speed. The Quicksilver could go down just a little bit. I think Flask effectiveness might be a little bit too powerful on some of the nodes. I'm just gonna say I know a lot of people will hate me if they change them, but the witch nodes with the Flask effectiveness are bonkers.
Yes.
And just in general, just like there are so many ways we can get movement. Obviously, it should be good to get movement speed.
Yes.
And you would want to get it, but it's the same with AoE. I think people are still getting AoE clusters and AoE. Obviously, the AoE nodes have been made better, but stacking as much is worse. So you don't keep getting it.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of different with movement speed. But
yeah. So, with that, I would say now I'm really curious to see what ends up happening with 3.0 and the beta and all that stuff, because what's today's date? It's the 5th of March. Yes. So that's, what did they say? They said mid-April? Or did they say end of April? I'd have to go look on that.
For what? For beta?
For the beta, yeah. I
don't think they said anything definitive, but I
thought they said April something.
Yeah, they were aiming for it at least somewhere around there, I think.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to see how this all turns out, because I think that Legacy, if I can set aside my first 2 or 3 hours problems, which I think, whatever, 1% of the population had this problem, it was clearly such a smooth launch. So they seem to be getting better and better at that. So
I had a lot of crashes. Did you encounter? I heard a few people who were at least talking in my chat saying that they were crashing a lot. And I saw a lot of crashes, but I have an AMD graphics card now because I ran into some problems, and that might be the cause. But do you have the experience that overall that it was a lot more smooth than it used to be?
Yeah, I would have said, because last league in Breach, I think I was crashing 4 or 5 times a day.
Huh.
But I think that might have been an MTX. As somebody in my very astute in my chat pointed out, that when I made my Golem character, I didn't crash ever. And they hadn't patched. They hadn't done it. Well, I guess we don't know. They could have patched in the background, but the character that I was, my Scorching Ray character, so it was either Scorching Ray or some aura or something, was crashing me. And that was eventually fixed. And so I haven't had that. And I only had the day one, can't find the asset. I had it both in Prison and Clarissa. So my impression is that it's actually very, very smooth. And if I can, I don't think it's breaking NDA, but I did play a little bit of alpha to try to find bugs before the league started. Only a little bit, because they don't release it so you can get merciless and find out all the things. I had no crashes. I think actually for the first time since Piety launch.
Really?
I would have.
Wow.
Yes. So Piety launch, which was Act 3. Act 3 was very, very polished on the alpha, and then since then, I think because they've been adding so many, that I think Piety, or maybe it wasn't Piety, maybe it was Dominus, where it was like nothing really changed about the game. They just added this section, so there wasn't really much to crash. Versus every time since then, we're adding Ascendancy, which brings in all this crazy stuff. Or there's now we've removed desync. Well, okay, that's not like it's not like they're not just waving they're not Merlin waving their wand and it just goes away.
No, obviously not.
Yeah. So I think it's been very, very smooth, and I'm pretty impressed. For as mad as I was day one about it, because I really enjoy the racing aspect, which we don't get as much as I would hope. It has been very, very smooth, and I was very impressed with the fact that so many people were on Steam. I couldn't believe that. What did Chris?
65,000, I think. Do we have any numbers on Steam users versus a client, like just the GGG client?
Last thing I believe was Jonathan said something. It's approaching 50-50.
50-50?
I think.
Okay.
In terms of, I think, for online. So.
And is it increasing? Is it increasing on the Steam? Like, is that taking more and more hold, or is?
Yes.
I would assume.
It is.
Okay.
Yes. Because Steam was 10-20%, I think, for quite a while. That's why I've always played on Steam, even though it's sometimes less convenient, because I wanted to increase the number, because the other one is, there's no record of anything in terms of what are people playing. And I think that it seems like it's really gotten to the point where there's this, now we have like even people who tried it didn't like it, or desync, or game was slow or something like that. Those people are coming back.
Yes.
To try again. And play again.
It's funny. I had a long conversation with one of my friends to where he said that the peak of PoE had already passed, being the release of the game.
Right.
And my argument was always, if GGG keeps improving and adding content in the same way that they did throughout beta and then the first content patches, well, then the game will only grow. And if they ever, my other, because his argument was, he had two arguments. One was that the game was performing so badly that he just couldn't play it. It was impossible. And the other one was desync, to where he was a hardcore player and he died to it a few times. And it really got to him. And so I said, well, if they ever fix those two problems, just the FPS issues and desync, then the game will take on a new form. It's gonna take on a completely new it's gonna just jump every time. Every time one of those two happens, it's gonna jump in terms of how many players are gonna be playing the game and staying with the game. Yeah, and I think that has happened.
And the interesting part is, well, maybe it's a bad metric, but I loved how there's all these League of Legends players who seem to like Path, and I mean Dota 2 as well, who liked Path of Exile, but wouldn't stream it. They would sometimes stream it, maybe if it was really new, but they would go, okay, whatever. But it seems like it's gotten to the point where people now, okay, this is a thing that people are doing in the queue or whatever. And so more and more people, it's like like you're saying, gaining that sort of
there is some, I think, especially on Twitch, if we're talking Twitch, I think there's like a threshold to where to how much popularity a game has to have before certain figures want to take it on. It's just how it is. You might be the biggest fan of, I can't come up with a game right now, but some random game, but you will never stream it because there's not enough. There's just not enough of a player base or enough interest around the game to where it'll be profitable for you at all as a streamer. And so I think there's a threshold with it, just simply like that.
I really, it's interesting because I feel like Diablo 3 kind of shitting the bed has been the greatest boon to Path of Exile, because I do think that there was a period of time where GGG kind of was dropping the ball a little bit. And I think that both of those times, well, maybe not both of those times, the first time they were quote unquote dropping the ball, they're an indie company of 5 people in a garage. So you understand why it's not a AAA title. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And at that particular point, Diablo 3 kind of shit the bed.
Was that in are we talking alpha beta here, or
that was like early, that was 2011, 2012. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I played the game and I was like, what is this, garbage in some sense. But so they're given buoyancy by that. And then I think that they were kind of trying to figure some things out, and the community was trying to, decide things, because things were kind of stagnant for a period of time. But the game was getting improved,
yes.
And then they've gotten to the point where they've improved it, and then D3 kind of reshit the bed again, which...
especially now with the with the latest announcements from, at least I think so, with the latest announcements of the Necromancer and the 8-bit Diablo 1 simulator.
Right.
I think that was a massive letdown to the majority of the D3 community, where people were even assuming that they would have announcing a new expansion or Diablo 4 or something like that, and then nothing came of it.
Right.
And that kind of like tipped the...
And what season is it in D3 right now? Or
I don't know, 8 or something.
Okay, so I played 5 or 6, and I actually enjoyed it. They'd made some improvements.
It's an okay game.
And then it's like, the problem is the bar has been changed.
Yeah.
GGG has set the bar where it is. So you're just kind of like, okay, and the thing is, I don't think D3 is a bad game necessarily.
No.
It's just, they just seem to not be able to provide.
I think it's just stagnated. I think ever since the whole PvP thing just died out, ever since then, I don't think there's been any real progression in D3.
Right.
I think they turned the game into something else because then they removed trading, they removed the whole auction house, everything that was built around D3 and was supposed to work together. They had to like take major components out of that, and you're left with a very different game. Right. And so how do you then you make it into this arcade style game, kind of solo game instead? Because now you can't trade with anyone, I think, either. Right. Or maybe you can't. When you're in the group together, you can.
In the group.
But otherwise not.
Right. And so then so it's interesting to me, what then, like in terms of legacy and the current stuff, I wonder what GGG's objective is in terms of trying to capture those D3 players as much as they possibly can.
I don't think they should try to. I think it would be a mistake to. It's not that it's not correct. Trying to capture D3 players, but why do you want to capture the remaining players of a failed, or not to say that Diablo is a failed concept, but within the genre, because I don't think Diablo and PoE can be, you can compare them one-to-one anymore. I think in the beginning, there were enough similarities between the two to where you could really compare them, and you can just say, but now we have two completely different games. I think we do, because there is the whole trading aspect, the complexity versus. There's more of a complex game with trading, item acquisition, and then you have like the arcade style game, which is Diablo 3. I don't really know what kind of an analogy you could set up, but I don't think you can really say that they're the same game. So do you really want to capture these arcade style players to your game?
Yeah,
I don't really think you do. I think you want to capture the people who are playing stuff like Dark Souls, and I honestly think they were inspired for the 3.0 launch. I don't know if you agree. If you see some of have you played Dark Souls?
No, but I've watched it. I forget who I've watched streaming it for like an hour. Various people at a Willy for a while, and some other people.
Okay,
I've watched. I mean, I think I would have played it if I wasn't just doing 5 other things. But yeah, I think it seems like that was the first thing everyone was saying. What was it? The skeleton of tricycle guy, and they were like, "Oh, that's like out of Dark Souls."
The ones that there's the spin in the wheel, the skeletons,
right?
They're inside it.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, I'm very excited, and it does seem like they have the freedom of use the same tile sets but create different ambiance and different monsters and different feel for those acts 6 through 10. And I mean, I've got to assume it's going to be a huge deal, because there's it's going to really be pushed. Never have to play through the game like you have to do in every other ARPG, including, well, I guess D3 is just but yeah, I think I'm very excited to see what ends up happening.
I think they have the ARPG genre in the bag, and now they just want to expand the game to where it's no longer just an ARPG, but it's where the game is its own entity, and it's going to be identified as its own thing rather than just being, well, it's this genre of game and you can talk about it in that sense.
Right.
Because then it's just a very generic game, and that's what Diablo 3 I think is. It's a very generic game. I think PoE is becoming, or at least to me at least, it seems much less so, to where it branches out in many different genres of games, which is, I think, a much better game if you can do that. If you can...
Yeah. It's funny. Hearing you say that, I agree with you, and then I start getting nervous because I already tolerate the sort of the puzzle lab part of the game. And I wish I could interact with it just a little bit less, but I listen. Okay, they're removing, however, we're gonna have to see how the difficulties and the axe and stuff works. So let's see if lab is completely reworked because I don't know, you know what I mean? And I don't mean in terms of what it does. I just mean I don't have to run normal, cruel, merciless attunement, right?
Oh yeah, I think I heard from an interview I believe they're going to have it something like you just do one attunement, like there's like 9 attunements throughout the entire thing, and then you're done at the end.
Okay.
So there's not going to be a difficulty anymore. So at various places in the game, you're faced with a little trial that you have to complete.
Right.
Which then allows you to face Izaro at 3 different stages, I guess.
Yeah. I would hope that I would hope that they would reduce it to 2.
To 2?
Like 1, 2 Izaros and then Uber Lab.
And then Uber Lab.
I think that would be better, because then that would be either 2-2-4 points, or I guess 3-3-2 points. But I guess the problem is the system's really based on getting 2 points at a time, given that it's tiny big in terms of the nodes or notable, whatever. What is it called? What are the notables, right? Yeah. So, okay. Well, I am very interested to see. I think that everyone at GGG must be pretty psyched about the launch, and then based on my little, very, very small inside knowledge, they're still very, very hard to work at 3.0. So I always think that's so funny about GGG, where it's like they do this great thing and it's like, yay, let's have a cake, and then get back to work. We got like 4,000 hours of coding to get done before 3.0. So anyway, I'm very positive about it. I wish the clutter was something they would deal with, but beyond that, I think that's my final, if I had to say like my final note on the launch, I think great launch. I'm a little concerned about the clutter, and I think that the AoE changes is the right direction. Although I still don't understand how Vessel of Vinctar is not nerfed. Just as a comment from somebody who played something that I don't think was as OP as Vessel of Vinctar was, and it was nerfed after 1 league of playing it. So I want to be like, we how many leagues has Vessel been out now? 4? 3?
Could you imagine that they came out the league before Ascendancy?
Okay, so 4 or 5. I don't know, 3, 4, 5. Yeah,
I think something like that.
So imagine.
Well, I think you could imagine them changing how Leech works, and Volpact in particular. Imagine Volpact is not a thing, and then how Leech works with Vigntars as well. Obviously, you get a lot, but you still cap out at a certain point. Right. Let's say you can cap out at that point with other mechanics anyways. If you can achieve the Leech cap rate with other items, then Vigntars doesn't seem that powerful anymore. It still gives you the shock mechanic, but it's hard to have the shock up all the time, especially if you're not investing in flash nodes. The faster clear speed you have, the more uptime it will have. So if they can slow it down just a little bit, I still feel it's a little, I know a lot of people don't want to have their power taken away and they want to go fast and all that, but sometimes it's a little bit much. But I think as long as they're putting in challenges for players that players want to interact with, then they're immediately going to go slow because there's a challenge that you have to overcome. And I think it's important that the game is just incentivizing the challenges so we can. And then Victors is all of a sudden not as crazy, because it's not going to be up all the time, and it's comparable to other mechanics. And as long as it's comparable, I think it's going to be in a much better state. But right now, it's just not. It's just way stronger than every other Leech mechanic. Like, the moment you have Vault Pact, it just nothing compares.
Right. Well, and you know, the interesting part, it shows my relative ignorance of CI or ES builds. I did not realize that when you got Vault Pact after the changes, that regen. I thought that your shield would not regen anymore, but it's a completely separate mechanic. No, but that's what I'm saying. So like that, I actually think if that was how there's like ways, but maybe it wouldn't be coded right, or it would affect all sorts of things. But like I feel like Vault Pact has actually been solved if they took a couple of the pieces of what they've done in the past to try to balance it. Would solve some of these things.
In particular.
Well, I mean, I do think one answer would be your ES will not regen, except when you're actually damaging something. I actually think that would be, and now I don't think that solves the current problem for 99% of the things, but at least there's a consistency there, because why would you not have life regen, but you can have ES regen? They're the same mechanic, although of course that's been the time. It
does strike me as odd that the Vault Pact has no downside on ES builds.
Right. Well, I think Mark or whoever has talked about how that is their age-old question, because is ES a defensive mechanic? Or I'm trying to think how exactly he phrased it. I don't remember exactly how he phrased it, but it was basically that one is your life pool, and one was also a defense and also a life pool. So they were always restricted in terms of what they could do to deal with it.
Yeah, I don't know how to think about that.
Anyway, so what's your final thoughts on the first couple days of Legacy? If you had to sum it up.
Final thoughts. That customizing is fun. Tinkering is fun. I think is the takeaway here. If there is like players like if you can set something up that's fun and dangerous, you will do it. So I don't know. I don't really have any final thoughts. I don't have enough time.
We're not there yet.
I think my final thoughts is that I really want to get some foiled uniques.
Yes. I have a foiled Terran Shiver.
Oh.
What? I guess a legacy Terran. It's a legacy Terran Shiver, so it's worse than the current.
I found that hilarious. Cool. I think that's so good.
Yeah, that's fun. That part's great. I like that part. That's great. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I think that's it. We're done. People can find me at Twitch TV/MorsRageNG. And then also I want to take a second to say, now, caveat, we just set this up. So if you go there, you're going to be like, wow, this looks like a forum. And yes, it is basically very, very, I grab the theme, gaming. But we do have a website, thecoffeetalkpodcast.com, where this will be uploaded. We also are being approved right now with iTunes, and we're going to get all of the stuff done, this RSS feed thing. So you can be alerted to it. You can also watch the podcast, or I should say, listen to the podcast on the website. That's one of the little features that we put on there, or you can download it. There's no restrictions. You can do whatever you want. And then obviously you can watch if you want to watch the video, you can watch it on Nugiyen's channel, and that is
youtube.com/nugiyen.
Nice. And your Twitch? Okay, I guess people are here for
Twitch, YouTube, you can everything is on the same handle, being Nugiyen.
Nice. All right, well, I'd say very good episode 2, and that's it.
Yeah.
Take it easy, guys.
See you later.